sponsored by the De Gama Group.
Welcome to Rumbo Minero. My name is Jorge Leon Benavides, along with Cesar Campos, whom I welcome.
How are you?
Hey, let's develop the current program. We have, Cesar, a rather interesting program regarding the technical side. Hey, to Carlos Herrera Descalzi, let's talk a bit about the unblocking. The theme then of the exploration is incredible that until now, the Ministry of Energy and Mines, and I'm not talking about ministers, I'm talking about the ministry in general of Energy and Mines, cannot make exploration in Peru attractive so that at least we can know what is available for national and foreign investors.
And especially when there is interest in wanting to invest in exploration, as Pablo de la Flor has already stated, Senior Manager of Corporate Affairs at Poderosa, who will do it in the district, in the La Libertad region, where they are precisely produced. So many conflicts and problems occur.
That's right. We will also be joined by Gustavo De Vinatea, the General Manager of the Institute of Mining Engineering. Let's talk about various topics, especially copper, which is a subject that concerns us today, and see what the path is that we must set for ourselves to finally make a breakthrough with copper. The time is now. So we come with these interviews, but first, let's get informed about the main mining news of the week, thanks to Gabriela.
Thank you, Jorge. These are the main mining news of the week.
By directorial resolution of the Tambomayo Mining Unit, submitted by Compañía de Minas Buenaventura S.A.A., SENACE approved the modification of the detailed environmental impact study for the Tambomayo Mining Unit. The project is located in the district of Tapay, province of Cayoma, department of Arequipa. Despite the attacks by illegal miners, the mining company Poderosa will continue investing in exploration projects in the La Libertad region. This was stated by Pablo de la Flor, Corporate Affairs Manager of Minera Poderosa. He also highlighted the company's optimism regarding the explorations for this region of La Libertad, which will focus on the Patas area, an area known for its gold-bearing potential. The net profit of Sociedad Minera Cerro Verde is $30 de la in the fourth quarter of 2024, facing a surplus of $0 in the fourth quarter of 2023. The higher net profit is essentially reflected by increased sales revenue, primarily attributed to higher copper sales volumes and an increase in molybdenum prices.
Chicoma, many thanks to Gabriela Chicoma for the main mining news of the week. Well, we are now with Gustavo De Vinatea, the General Manager of the Institute of Mining Engineers of Peru. Gustavo, how are you? Welcome
Good morning,
to
how are you?
Rumbo Minero.
It's a pleasure to be here.
Gustavo, tell us a bit about your analysis, right? We know that in terms of mining production, copper represents more than 50% of the mining GDP. In the year-end count for 2024, it will end with a production of around 2.5, 2.7 million metric tons of fine copper. But there's always this issue. As Roque Benavides said, the important thing is to keep producing, but there's always this issue that we're far from Chile, right?
Yes, I believe there's a great effort from the sector to innovate, to invest in technology, and that has allowed us to maintain our second place. We are fighting for it. But the level of exploration we have is still lacking, and I think that's where the main difference with Chile lies.
We should speed up a bit for exploration, of course, and the Congo, again with problems, constantly the political issues which are very serious, because they are military topics and coups. At some point, it reaches us in second place, but it falls again due to these serious issues.
Correct. And we have to earn the merits to prevent that from happening. And I believe that as a state, we need to have a clearer mining policy as a state. We, from the Institute, like your program, seek to foster dialogue and agree on how to develop mining and how to develop the country. In that sense, this is a very special year for the Institute. We have our two major conventions, which are Pro-Explo from May 5th to 7th this year, which is precisely about promoting investment in explorations. We believe that we have immense potential in Peru as a polymetallic country, but exploration is still very lagging behind. And in September, we have the other convention, which is Perumin, 67, which is going to be a special year. We are celebrating 70 years of Perumin. Oh, look, yes, it's going to be an important milestone. And 30 uninterrupted years in Arequipa. I think it's a milestone that we want to celebrate with the entire mining ecosystem. And for the first time, here's the scoop. This week we have launched the Alameda of the Academy at Perumin XX7. For the first time, there will be a space dedicated exclusively to the Academy. And various universities from around the world, in addition to national, public, and private ones, and research institutes have already committed to participate. So it will be a space dedicated to the Academy and to this crucial link that will exist between research, scientific innovation, and the mining world. Excellent.
Returning to expectations, Gustavo del Cobre, Minister Jorge Montero, head of the energy and mines sector, has pointed out that we need to set ourselves the goal of an annual production of 3 million tons of copper. Of course, he has emphasized the issue of Tia Maria. Hopefully, this year we will see it completely unblocked and producing. But at the same time, there is little talk about how the single window is functioning. Recently, Diego Macera from the Peruvian Institute of Economics in the Commerce was pointing out the only simplification what the Peruvian state, the current government, is offering is the single window for the mining sector. Is this really operating as such? Is something missing? How do you see it from the Institute?
Well, in 2023, the single window was launched within the framework of a Perumin. Perumin XXV 34. Sorry. So far we see it as a good initiative. It brings together 10 state entities linked to the mining sector, but it still doesn't fully function as a window separate from other sectors. That's why I believe the most important progress the country can make in the mining sector is what the former Minister of Energy and Mines, Romulo Mucho, has launched last year during a Mining Thursday at the Institute, where he is a former president. He launched the multi-sectoral mining policy to XXXX. And I believe that effort now needs to be monitored, because I think it's truly what Peru needs to do. Not just a one-stop shop where the Minister of Energy and Mines, right, forces other sectors to contribute and participate, but rather it should genuinely be a state vision that designs a multi-sectoral policy in which the entire Peruvian state, all its components, not just the executive, legislative, judicial, view mining as a lever for development. And we Peruvians agree on how to develop the country using mining as a major engine.
So that each one is not asked for something individually, but rather there is a commitment from all sectors to move forward with this.
Right? Correct. That's fundamental, because if not, let's see, mining exploits a finite resource. Of course, if the state doesn't have a national policy to develop the country using mining as a lever, what happens is that the project arrives, develops the communities for a few years, and then leaves. But we don't achieve the country's development like other countries have, right? I've worked in the state for 12 years. We have always been in search of a model that Peru can follow to achieve development and become a country of opportunities for its people. And we have seen that there are successful models. Australia has achieved it based on mining, extractive industry. Canada, Chile itself, based on the Australian model, has managed to reach a level of development where its people have greater opportunities, right? I think that's what we want.
Right? Now, well, with all this election stuff, Trump's inauguration in the United States, the issue of tariffs, he wants to raise tariffs. There's a lot of turmoil, right? To this, we add that according to the Institute itself, the world's copper deficit would start between 26 and 27. Peru, as the second largest producer in the world, has an important role in addressing this deficit. I'm not sure if Chile has the option to produce much more than it already is, but I think Peru does. And precisely the direction you're heading in is important for that role that Peru has in helping the world with this deficit in 26 next year. To start to face problems due to not obtaining copper, right?
Correct. Look, Jorge, I believe that circumstances will always exist. There will always be conflict. There will always be new leaderships proposing different policies, and circumstances will always affect mining. But let's remember that mining is a long-term endeavor, right? And what we need to focus on are those long-term processes. The world, beyond the circumstances, has embarked on an energy transition that is now irreversible. And indeed, the world's major leaders are seeking to secure the supply of those critical minerals for the development of alternative energies. The electrification of the world is a process that is now irreversible. So I believe that in this global scenario, the other day I heard a phrase that I really liked, which said Peruvian mining will save the planet. Because indeed, Peru produces 8 of the 17 critical minerals. We already have a memorandum of understanding with the United States to ensure the supply of these minerals to one of the global players that wants to play a leading role in the transition to renewable energy. And so other countries are seeking to secure that supply. Therefore, Peru is beginning to have a prominence that we must take advantage of. Mining is a matter of opportunities, isn't it? We know there have been other opportunities in the past that Peru has failed to seize, not taking advantage as it should have. It's happening to us with oil, isn't it? It's happening, oil is being replaced. And we Peruvians are going to be left with a lot of oil in the Amazon, with a pipeline built, with a recently inaugurated refinery, and without extracting this resource that could help us develop. Now,
You've mentioned something quite interesting. I've been analyzing the break time, very 0.5. Now we can truly see who the real environmentalists are and who are the Reds disguised as environmentalists, because it's true what you say, mining will save the world. And at this moment, the real environmentalists are saying, yes, we need the mineral to save the world. Break time, 0.4. But what a coincidence that there is a group that still finds mining objectionable. And there, you really realize that ideology sometimes transcends break time, 0.6, a genuine concern for protecting the environment, right?
correct. And what you mentioned is extremely important. Sustainability in our sector is fundamental, isn't it? We believe that mining should be done, but it should be world-class mining of the highest standard. And in this, Peru must be very responsible. We need to attract investments, but we must bring in the best investments, those that propose sustainable and enduring development. So I believe that Peru has a convergence of top-tier companies. I think we are the country in the world with the most top-tier companies. And not only foreign ones, our national companies also have a world-class level, don't they? Top-tier in environmental care, in safety, etc. And that is what we Peruvians must seek. Investments, yes, but quality investments, right? Where the environment is protected, making our development sustainable. Informal mining development is of no use to us if it pollutes and leaves liabilities. Ultimately, it leaves irreparable damage, and the country suffers the consequences.
You have spoken about the long-term perspective that mining has, its resilience, and this leads us to address the fact that the issue is surrounded by drama, as is the case with the mining company Poderosa, tied up in the region of La Libertad. However, Pablo de la Flor, corporate affairs manager of the same company, has stated that Poderosa will continue investing in exploration. This is information previously provided by MINEN, the Ministry of Energy and Mines, stating that it is incredible how La Libertad ranks first in investment intentions for exploration. And that has a lot to do with resilience. What do you think, Gustavo?
Yes, I believe the example of Poderosa is emblematic, but I think there are many mining companies that have bet on Peru for the long term, that have endured phenomena like terrorism, hyperinflation, and other issues, insecurity, citizens, etc. Daily extortions, and yet they continue to invest in Peru because mining is a long-term commitment. I think the example you gave of Poderosa is very significant. I believe the conditions in which they are operating are very complicated, yet it is a company that continues to invest in the country's development. I believe the state needs to place more emphasis on what is happening. Recently, there was an attack of another level in Trujillo against the public ministry, and this speaks to the proximity to this area of illegal mining so strong that Peru has, which is this area of Patas, where Poderosa is located. I believe we must stop seeing these issues as an isolated problem of Minera Poderosa. I think illegal mining is a state problem, just as drug trafficking was at one time when it put us in check. I believe today illegal mining, which has displaced drug trafficking as an economic and legal activity, must be viewed from the perspective of the state and how to confront it in an organized manner. It is not just a problem for MINEM, the Ministry of Energy and Mines, nor for a specific company. I believe that we Peruvians must realize that it is a problem affecting the security and viability of this state.
Gustavo, congratulations on the management at the Institute. We know you are progressing professionally and very well. And as always, you have full support from Rumbo Minero.
Congratulations on the program, which is also a great achievement. So many years teaching and sharing knowledge about the mining sector. Thank you very much.
Thank you. All right, that was Gustavo De Vinatea, General Manager of the Institute of Mining Engineers. Let's take a commercial break and we'll be back. All right, in our America Mining segment, we are joined by the international editor of our magazine Rumbo Minero, José Gonzáles. José, how are you?
Good. Delighted to be with you as always, Jorge.
Tell us a bit. Minero just reported that the national copper production for November, it reached a little over 241,000 metric tons, 2.1% more than in October and 4.6% less than in November of 2023. For a total production from January to November totaling 2,472 metric tons, 472 metric tons, 1% less than the same period in 2023. December's production is similar to November's. The total production for 2024 would be slightly below 2023. Why is this issue arising?
It's going to be a recurring topic, Jorge, these days. See how much copper we produced last year? And although November's production month to month was the second highest of the year and had that year-on-year increase you mentioned, production fell due to a reduction in Antamina's production month to month, November by 31%. Now, if we add up the 11 months in the production, compared to the same period in 2003, production fell marginally due to a drop in Cerro Verde's production by 5.1%, and which I carried with 4.4%. As you mentioned, if we assume that November's production is similar to December's, similar to November, we will not meet last year's MINEM target of producing 2.8 million tons. That is to say, we would be at 3.1% below the target and below the production of 23 by 1.5%. What does this mean? There is a discussion in international publications and among mining analysts nationally that Peruvian copper production may have reached a plateau. Why a plateau? Because the production of 24 is not higher than 23, and that of 25, 26 will not grow. They will not grow substantially because there are no projects in these 4 years that will increase that production. However, this plateau is temporary and not secular. Why? There are 15 major copper projects that would change the entire scenario of Peru's copper production by the year 2037, provided they occur. The problems that arise in the process are resolved. Huicharetía María, Coro Cubaico, Ampliación Toromocho, Zafranal, Los Chancas, La Granja, Michiquillá, Jaquira, Coimolache, Quechua, Cotabamba, Antemina Replacement, El Galeno, and Rio Blanco. All are in different stages of production. These are projects where proven copper exists and can be produced, with production dates set, except for 2 of them, and we have the volumes. All these projects would produce 2.448 million tons, which would increase the current naval production from 2.7 million to 5.2 million. We would be here. We would be. We wouldn't reach it. Now let's review the numbers from Chile that Cochilco just published. We would be close, almost doubling the production and getting
but already
closer to Chile.
seated in the second place.
Correct. And furthermore, assuming the Congo, it is currently in a confrontation. The rebels
Constantly,
evidently,
isn't it?
but it is worse on the border between Rwanda and the Congo. The M30 rebels have just taken one of the most important cities, Goma of the Congo. And the fight is to take control of the mining resources of the Republic of the White Congo with geopolitical and social risks. Now, if we assume that this production is from the year 37 in Peru, and we assume that the price of copper rises 3% per year in line with demand over these 12 years, the income from copper could reach $72 billion annually. That is 275% of what was earned from copper exports in the year 23. In Peru. In 12 years, we can generate more income from copper than in the previous 40 years.
Impressive. Precisely, Jose, as you mentioned, we were talking off camera with Jorge Contigo about this very interesting report, Cochilco, which makes a projection of copper production over the period of a decade from the years 2024 to 2034. Give us some data on how they are sizing up in this report. The goal that Chile seeks in its copper production.
As you know, Cesar, this Cochilco is the Chilean Copper Commission. It is the one that is in Peru. We should have a bit of that perspective, this vision of just the pessimism about production. Undoubtedly, producing metals and minerals is challenging, but one must always think ahead. We can have a plateau of 2, 3 years, 4 years at most, but the outlook is important. And according to Cochilco, which always forecasts the future, the share of Chilean copper production in the world would increase from 23.6% in 24 to 27, 0.3% driven by new projects and the expansion of current projects. If Chile expects to produce 5.54 million in 34, we would get almost close with ours, which represents a growth of 5.6% compared to the production in 2023. Where it reached 5.25 million tons with a peak year of 6 million tons in 27. That is to say, what do the Chileans tell you? That they are going to reach a peak in 27 and then start to decline. If there is not only a plateau, but a decrease, because let's remember the Chilean mines
are old.
They are old, large, and don't have many green fields, they have many brown fields. What does Cochilco tell you? Also that the production of copper concentrates will be 87% of the total production and cathodes, 12.3. There is a fundamental issue. Starting from 1980, the production of heap leaching and the giant Latin American porphyries became the major source of copper. The production of sulfides and cathodes is decreasing globally, although it is more expensive in Peru. In the case of Peruvian porphyries, they are the lowest cost globally and represent the horizon of copper production in Peru. Absolutely important as Peru matures in its mining perspective. We need to leave behind the pessimism of annual volatility and start thinking in terms of horizons and inventories regarding our production in time series.
Much larger scenarios.
Correct, and more long term. When one looks at Peru's copper production from 1980 and the projection to 37, the correlation between governments and production is non-existent. This does not deny that if Garcia's government defined a series of things in a bad government, production skyrocketed. But there is no copper projects. They take an average of 18 years from exploration to production. Therefore, the outlook for copper companies is very long term, and circumstances do have an impact. But we must start thinking ahead and not necessarily about what is happening today.
Agreed. Many thanks to José Gonzáles, as always. We will also address these topics in the mining sector in Rumbo Minero magazine, the international editorial of Rumbo Minero magazine. José Gonzáles. We have the magazine speaking precisely about Rumbo Minero magazine. Don't forget www.rumbominero.com, and you can access all these topics for free on the web. You can download the magazine and read it, as well as see the most important suppliers from the mining sector. Now Cesar has something to tell us.
Of course, we present a block of mining assets, AMSAC.
Well, we are now with the former Minister of Energy and Mines, the engineer, Carlos Herrera Descalzi. Engineer, how are you? Welcome.
Very well. Thank you very much. Good morning.
We have a problem with being able to grow in copper, being able to grow in production, being able to grow, but we are not seeing that in order to reap, you have to sow. And exploration in Peru is not only slow, it is not interesting for many investors because the rules set by the Peruvian state are not attractive, and we are not sowing for the future. What would you do about this exploration issue?
We're still in one detail already because we are not talking about renewable resources. We are talking about non-renewable resources. This means that the production we have today with what we have today will decrease in the future. So it's not just about exploring to grow, but exploring to be able to compensate for what is being lost, which is the most difficult thing of all. I think we are not aware, we are not clear. I mean, there are basic ideas in a country. One thing that all of Peru needs to know is that Peru fundamentally lives off mining, that Peru's income is mining, and that everything that other sectors represent in which growth occurs is supported by the productive sectors. And among the productive sectors, the most important is mining. So if we don't secure the future of mining, we are undermining the country's economic foundations. And then not growing in mining, not having exploration resources, doesn't just mean that we won't grow, which is desirable to improve life, but that we will decline because there will be no way to replace what becomes depleted. And that is a worrying situation of decline in the future. So the issue is conceptual because exploration shouldn't pose major problems. If it were up to me, I would do it via sworn declaration and implement good supervision.
That's enough. Sorry, engineer, and yet more regulations are created. You, as the Minister of State, know we're not just going to talk about mining. In every aspect, the tendency to bureaucratize, to create scenarios that are much more challenging to achieve the goal of consolidating the record of an exploration has been happening, and that's why we are one of the least attractive countries on that path. What do you think we should amend as soon as possible?
I believe we need to lift all those kinds of regulations, but above all, and that's why I made that statement, break time 0.7s. We need to move away from scrutinizing every detail in everything. When you see in any aspect, in any company, a recommendation from one of the control bodies, break time. It's an accountant's perspective on the matter. Break time. Then they say specific regulations are missing to control, and they always want to add more and more regulations. Regulations cost. Regulations represent more time. It's unproductive work. Regulations are a necessity, but only to a certain extent. One cannot keep extending them because...
And what is your opinion on the matter of the digital single window? Some voices say, well, it has been digitized, what already existed, and that's simply all that's been done. There hasn't been any progress in speed. How efficient is it?
It could be very efficient. So how would I do it? How would I achieve it? I would have it programmed digitally with deadlines and responsibilities, saying this goes to such a place, there are so many people to cover this issue, and they have this deadline. And within that time, they tell me this is impossible for such and such reason. This is missing all of this from here, or it goes away. Pretty tough. So to have a truly efficient team and for things to work, I mean, if there are no obstacles, what's going to happen?
And there should also be administrative silence, right? I mean, it can't take 4 months for one of the deadlines, can it?
Look, I live very close to Comandante Espinar. We've been there for 3 months. Every time I need to leave where I am, I have to account for an extra half hour compared to before to be able to cross Comandante Espinar. In my opinion, that could have been done in a week. In my opinion, what should be prioritized is people's time, the time of the citizen who pays for these works with their taxes. And no, I don't know how they're doing it. I don't know how they can spend 3 months on that. So the state tends to be very indifferent when it comes to the deadlines of the administered. It seems like they don't care. It seems like they aren't aware that the resources the state lives off are necessary, right? But the resources they live off are provided by the state.
And even worse, the state's investment to promote mining is lackluster, despite it being the sector that contributes the most.
And having contradictory messages, in other words, what's fundamental in a nation for it to orient itself and have clear ideas about in which direction it is heading is like in a family, right? In the family, not the father's salary is fundamental. No one in the family is going to go against the father's salary. And in the case of Peru, it is the productive sectors that enable Peru's growth. That's where work comes from. That's where opportunities to improve living standards for people and families come from. So one must have a clear understanding of the value of the productive sectors. I believe that in many sectors, the public worker is not aware of that, right? They are not aware of where the resources that pay their salary come from.
In the process of discussing the MAPE law on artisanal mining, small-scale mining, Engineer Herrera Descalzi, there are elements that are concerning us and that are also being reported to us through the media. Peru 21 specifically. Last week they released information indicating that two leaders, one from CONAMIN and the other from CENAMI, who represent the informal sector, requested a major outcry very loudly to the official from the General Directorate of Mining Formalization, the MINEN, to remove their representative because they claim he does not favor them. And there are several voices expressing concern about the way the MAPE law is being debated with this pressure and this practically overwhelming imposition by the leaders of the informal sector present there. Do you think this situation should change a bit? How can true mining formalization be defended without biases of this nature?
Of course, it has to change. This is a clash of forces. And what we are seeing from this clash of forces is that the people who are behind informal and above all illegal mining feel that their arm is stronger than the arm of the state and that the state lacks the capacity to act. And therefore, the state should have developed the capacity to act. It doesn't need a law to have the ability to act, right? We've discussed this on other occasions. What is needed to closely monitor the inputs and the products. And of course, the state has the capacity, and as I've said, it even has profitability. Because if we are talking about an activity, in the case of informal mining, that generates around $8 to $10 billion in gold, extracting 30% in taxes that can be taken from there, generously covers all the costs the state might incur in that and leaves benefits for other activities. But then it must have the capabilities, and we do not see those capabilities. What we are seeing are capabilities, economic, even political, of the informal mining sectors, and illegal, and also a lack of understanding of how the system works. For example, it is said regarding areas that are not exploited or are not yet under exploitation that they have permits through long-term validity rights. The process is not understood. The process is because the investment process is extremely lengthy, and no one is going to invest in something they do not have a right to. In other words, one must first have the right, and after obtaining the rights, they conduct the studies. Then come the lengthy studies we've discussed due to the permits, the country's evaluation, because Peru is not the only one with mineral resources in the world. There are many countries competing for mineral resources around the world, in Africa, in Asia, and also in South America. Others are awakening. So we have to be able to win that. So we are in a competitive game, and in that long process, throughout the entire process, they must have the rights. Because what good is it if the rights expire after 8 years? We no longer have any opportunities.
Now the Peru Libre Party has presented a proposal for Peru to retain lots 1, 6, and Z69. Isn't this just giving Peru more breathing room? Will it be efficient? Is it really worth it? Or do you think it's better to put them out to tender?
In the case of these resources in particular, in the state they are in now, what they contribute is very little. We are living through a long oil cycle that is coming to an end. I don't think there will be oil exploitation in the 22nd century. And I'm not sure if we'll reach the last 2 decades of the current century, the 21st century. So what we have to do, we have to take advantage of it. What I understand is that in that area there are possibilities, but in deep waters. So the idea was not to continue distributing a lot of small batches among small companies that also don't have the capacity to do it. Peru doesn't have the capacity to do it either. The idea at one point from Peru Petro was to combine everything into a large batch and call in a major investor to attract a major investor who could make a significant discovery. In recent years, we have made significant discoveries in Guyana, in other countries.
To meet our demand, right? Which we don't even cover.
To see if there is something truly important that allows us to make a leap, not to be consumers. Because for me, when it comes to energy, the idea is all renewable, all electric. But the resources, if we have oil, it's to sell it. It's to be able to export. We have to take advantage of it. So I don't see Peru being capable of doing that. I don't even know if in the coming months they will ask for another $1 billion. I don't even know how their accounts are doing. They were never clear. They were never transparent.
It seems we will have to wait for the next government because we have asked for clarity several times and things don't
Get heard.
Very well. We thank you, Engineer Carlos Herrera Descalzi, for being with us. And we hope to have you again to discuss these topics that are technical and that you handle well, but are very important for people to understand them properly. Thank you very much for being with us on Rumbo Minero.
Thank you very much also for the invitation. As always, it's a pleasure to chat with you.
Thank you. Well, let's go to a commercial break and we'll be right back. All right, Cesar, we're reaching the end of the program. I do think something needs to be done with Peru. I think that it's not moving forward. The alternative of liquidation and starting a new company could be interesting, but we need efficiency. And who knows, maybe a public-private management, it's a personal opinion, a public-private management, but in a new company. What Peru is really doing is sinking, as they say, constantly, and all Peruvians are paying for it. If you've already created a huge monster with unions, a liquidation must be started and then suddenly begin anew with a public-private partnership in management where you have a company that is truly healthy.
I lean towards the new authorities, Jorge from Peru, providing a report on what they have promised. Since their last intervention, when Alejandro Narvaez and engineer Oscar Vera Gargorevich showed with great anticipation how the recovery process was going to be. What I'm getting at is the transparency with which they should always inform continuously, precisely to dispel doubts like yours, which many specialists in the sector have. Hopefully, Peru will at least tell us their intentions by the end of January.
Of course,
and this is an option.
If we are already in the blue, okay, but on the way to being in the blue or on the way to being in the blue, but the issue is that it has to be super transparent, not more or less super transparent, because all Peruvians have the right to know what is being done, because later they ask for money, and where are we? And between roosters and midnight, that's how it is. And of course, what Gustavo De Vinatea told us, talking about the Institute, talking about Perumin, about ProExplo, always very pleasant and important events, right? And the issue of copper. Look at the figures José Gonzáles gives us, right? I mean, if all the copper projects that should already be activated for the coming years are activated, we could be very close to Chile. to the first place for the first time in history. Very, very close. And also, in 2037, Chile falls in its copper production where we would already be leading. Keep an eye on that.
With all the projects we have there, of course, the flagship continues to be Tia Maria, and hopefully this year we will have positive news.
That's right. Well, thank you all very much for being with us. To Jorge Leon Benavides, Cesar Campos. We were on this program, Rumbo Minero, and next, stay with us to talk about infrastructure and construction with Peru. Thank you very much.